So this week at APRICOT's relatively busy. There's a number of things that have been happening and also I suppose a number of angles that we've been talking about. A couple of the presentations I'm doing are things that I've done in previous years, more as a running commentary. The first of these is actually a presentation around the state of the routing system. Around, about 30 odd years ago, we thought the routing system was going to explode in our face. Just unconstrained growth, things were going to go horrible. Oddly enough, it hasn't, but we're not exactly sure why. And it's really good news that it hasn't exploded, but it's kind of disturbing to understand that as we put more and more things into the routing system, at what point will the routing system just give up and go away? And that would be, a catastrophe. So there's this constant monitoring to actually understand how well is it performing, what's going on, what practices are making the routing system scale, and what seem to be imperiling it. And some of that presentation is actually looking at how the routing system is performing and how it's evolving over time. The other part of the concern 30 years ago was about addressing. And that was all about the issue of addresses really run the internet. Well, that's what we thought. And even back in 1990, it was pretty clear that we were going to run out. And it was pretty clear we had to do something about it. And so we've been watching addresses very, very carefully as a result. This is no surprise. And the presentation on addressing is actually about what's going on. So for example, in the Asia Pacific region, we ran out of sort of the general allocation pool of addresses back in 2011. But since then, we kept hold of what we call a /8. It's about 16, 17 million addresses. And we've been handing those out one to every member, at most 1,000 addresses. So it's a relatively small allocation. Realistically, it's only useful for NATs. But we're still allocating out of that. There's about 6 million of those addresses left, which is quite a fair bit. That pool will last until early 2020. The RIPE NCC in Europe has a very similar policy. They have slightly more addresses left in their pool, about 12 million. That's going to last until early 2021. Two other RIRs, North America, ARIN, and in Latin and South America, LACNIC, didn't do that. And they're basically out. And what that means, of course, is if you want addresses, the local RIR can't help you in those regions. They're kind of pushed into a transfer market immediately. And so the other part of this presentation looks at exactly what's happening with transfers. Theoretically, folk are meant to register transfers. After all, if I've paid you for something, addresses, it'd be nice for everyone else to know they're now mine, and the registry system's one way of doing that. So I'm looking at addresses that moved as distinct from addresses in the transfer registries, trying to understand to what extent does the transfer registry actually track addresses that move. To cut to the chase, the bad news, we seem to be registering around 10% of moving addresses. 10%. It's not clear what the other 90% are doing, but it's pretty clear we don't know either. And that's probably a bad thing. We probably need to do some more work about trying to understand where and how these addresses move and what registration instruments would allow that movement to reflect whatever change of ownership or arrangement, being a transfer of title or a lease, might have happened to those addresses. So I'm trying to help inform a subsequent policy debate with some real data about how much of this is going on.